When the late afternoon light entered through the curtains of the small room she had been carefully arranging for the arrival of her baby, Amelia felt a sense of quiet anticipation mixed with something far more profound, as if the very walls of the house, inherited from her grandmother and filled with whispers of another time, were breathing with her and waiting alongside her, and it was in that golden stillness that she pushed the crib. A family heirloom passed down through generations into its final corner by the window, only to notice that one of the wooden slats felt strangely loose, as though it carried within it a story that had been waiting for years, perhaps decades, to be told. She pressed her fingers against the carved wood, the worn surface polished by the touch of countless hands before her, and in the faint creak that followed she discovered a small fold of paper, yellowed by age and fragile as though even the air might tear it apart, hidden deep within the seam where no one would think to look. Her heart quickened in a rhythm she had never felt before, not even in the early days of her pregnancy when every flutter inside her belly had been both joy and fear entwined, and with trembling hands she unfolded the letter, its ink faded yet still legible, each curve of the handwriting echoing a voice that seemed to call her name across the barrier of time. And as she read the first lines, she realized the words were not written to a stranger, but to her. Amelia, the unborn child of another era, addressed with love and urgency by a mother she had never known. The letter spoke of choices made in silence, of sacrifices carried like hidden scars, of a woman who, in the turbulence of her youth, had loved deeply yet found herself unable to raise her own daughter, entrusting her instead to the care of a distant relative while sealing away the truth in the very crib that would cradle her, so that one day, when destiny deemed her ready, she would uncover not only her beginnings, but also the strength and purpose woven into the bloodline she carried. Amelia felt her vision blur as tears welled up, not of sorrow alone, but of awe. For in that moment she understood that she was part of something larger than herself, a story that stretched beyond the limits of her memory and into the realm of spirit, where ancestors watched with quiet hope and unseen hands guided the unfolding of lives. As the candle on the dresser flickered with a sudden breath of air, Amelia felt the atmosphere of the room shift, as though time itself had bent gently to embrace her, and she closed her eyes, pressing the fragile letter against her heart, whispering gratitude into the silence that was no longer empty, but alive with presence. The words of the letter lingered in her mind, weaving images of a young woman walking alone by moonlight, cradling within her the dream of a child she could not keep, yet refusing to let that child grow up without the knowledge of love's endurance. And Amelia realized that the letter was not merely a confession, but a blessing, a gift of light passed from one soul to another through the sacred vessel of the crib. In the days that followed, she carried the letter with her like a talisman, reading and rereading its lines as she painted the walls of the nursery, as she folded tiny clothes that smelled of new beginnings, and as she placed stuffed animals on the shelves where the shadows danced playfully in the evening glow. And each time she held the paper, she felt her unborn daughter stirring gently, as if responding to the legacy of words written generations before her own heartbeat had begun. She began to speak aloud to the child within her, telling her the story of the hidden letter, telling her that life is not a straight line of certainty, but a tapestry woven from countless threads of choice, love, and mystery. And in speaking, she felt herself healed, as though by giving voice to the secret she was releasing the silence that had weighed unknowingly upon her spirit. Her husband Daniel noticed the change in her, how her gaze grew softer yet more luminous, how she seemed to listen to something beyond the ordinary when she walked through the garden or stood in the doorway of the nursery, and though at first he worried that the letter's revelation might wound her, he soon saw that it had instead given her wings. For she spoke of belonging not as a wound of abandonment, but as a miracle of connection, a chain unbroken even when hidden from sight. Together they would sit by the crib at night, the letter resting between them, and Amelia would read aloud in a voice that trembled, yet grew steadier with each passing evening, until the words became not only her mother's but her own, part of a lineage of strength and forgiveness carried forward into a future bright with possibility. There were nights when Amelia dreamed vividly of a woman she had never seen, with hair that shimmered like starlight and eyes filled with both sorrow and fierce love. And in those dreams, the woman would place her hands gently over Amelia's belly, whispering lullabies in a language older than memory, promising that every child carries the wisdom of those who came before. And Amelia would awaken with the sense that her room had been filled with the quiet rustle of wings, as though angels had brushed past the curtains while she slept. These dreams filled her with courage, reminding her that though the road of motherhood was new and unknown, she was never truly alone. For unseen companions walked beside her, guiding her steps with the strength of stories carried in blood and spirit. As the months passed and her belly grew round, Amelia began to write letters of her own. Small notes she tucked into drawers and journals, messages to her future child, telling her of the love that awaited her, of the wonder hidden in simple things like the smell of rain or the song of birds at dawn, and of the importance of always listening to the whispers of the heart even when the world seemed too loud. She realized that the act of writing was not only for the child but also for herself, a way to weave her voice into the tapestry of the family, ensuring that the story would never again be lost to silence, but would flow onward like a river, carrying light across generations. When the day finally came, and Amelia held her daughter in her arms, the world seemed to pause, every sound softened, every breath sacred, and she felt as though the letter in the crib had become flesh, as though the hidden words had taken form in the eyes of the child who gazed at her with infinite trust. She whispered her name, Ilara, chosen for the brightness of the stars, and in that whisper, Amelia promised that her daughter would grow surrounded not by secrecy, but by truth, not by absence, but by the presence of countless voices that had converged to bring her into being. Years later, as Ilara grew and learned to walk, to laugh, to ask questions that stretched wide, as the sky, Amelia would sometimes take out the old letter, its paper more fragile now, but its words still glowing with power, and she would tell her daughter the story not as a burden, but as a gift, reminding her that every life is rooted in both shadow and light, and that from the union of both arises the magic of becoming. Ilara would listen with wide eyes, and though she could not yet understand the depth of what was being shared, she would reach out with her small hands to touch the paper, giggling as if she too could feel the pulse of the unseen. And so the legacy continued, not hidden in wood but carried openly in heart and voice. For Amelia had learned that the greatest inheritance we can give is not gold or land, but the courage to embrace our origins, to forgive the silences of the past, and to transform them into songs of love that guide the generations yet to come. In this way, the letter hidden in the crib became more than a secret revealed. It became a bridge across time, a reminder that every soul is born not from chance alone, but from the careful weaving of countless unseen hands, and that within each of us lies a spark of the eternal waiting to be recognized, cherished, and passed forward in turn.